This is a Sports Catastrophe production. Hey there, Heather Ho there. It's Jeff Cutter Diamond. Welcome you to another Sports Catastrophe on this date. And on this date, April 26th, it was a big moment in 1995. Baseball, it was back in session. So, baseball had its problems. Of course, you know, the 94 strike that happened that ruined the sport and all that. Talk about that to a Montreal Expos fan, and you will be lucky to get out of there alive. Okay, give me a screen. Oh, anyway, the fact of the matter was that although there was actually a game the previous day between the Dodgers and Marlins that opened up the 95 season, the first full day of action took place April 26, 1995. Now, Cleveland and Seattle were waiting on weather to start their series, but they didn't start right off the bat. So there were 13 games. Now, there was a bit of controversy because the MLB umpires were going to be on strike for a while. They got on strike for a few days, so there would be like replacement officials, umpires and all that. Now, I talked at length many times about the 94 MLB strike and how damaging it was, you know, to the fan base and to the players and the owners, because the owners were holding back money things and all that. Players wanted the books to be said. Like, are you really losing money or are you just being greedy? You know what? So, anyhow, there was a baseball thing. Now, another reason why there was talk about the baseball season starting, for baseball season to be starting in April 95, was because they were making replacement players like Kevin Pillar and a few other players were going to be in play. Now, the Blue Jays had trouble because under Ontario law, you can't like bring in strike breakers, aka like replace scabs. So Toronto would have had to play all their games in Florida with the replacement players, well, their home games at least. Fortunately, though, Sonia Sotomayor saved baseball. She's now a Supreme Court judge. Anywho, so 13 games were on the docket. There were some not so memorable games, some very memorable games. The Braves crushed the Giants 12-5 as Greg Maddux beat Terry Mulholland. The Red Sox shut out Minnesota 9-0. Aaron Seeley beat Scott Erickson. The Tigers won a close one. Mike Moore taking out the Angels 5-4. Mike Moore beat Chuck Finley. Buddy Green got the save. The Cubs with a big 7-1 win. Jim Bollinger with a win over Jose Rijo. Mike Perez to save. The Dodgers beat the Marlins for the second straight day. Candiotti beat Mark Gardner, former Expo, and with Rudy Sayans picking up his second save of the year. Royals beat the Orioles 5-1. Kevin Appier beat Jamie Moyer. Brewers crushed the White Sox 12-3. Angel Miranda beat Alex Fernandez. The Astros crushed the Padres 10-2. Doug Drabek beat Andy Benes. The Cardinals narrowly beat the Phillies 7-6. Rene Arocha beat Norm Charlton. But there were some big games. There were 4 games that I didn't talk about, but I'm talking about them in detail. First game, the number 4 important game of April 26, 1995 was Expos Pirates. Expos winning the game 6-2. A key win for the Expos as Jeff Asaro took care of John Lieber. But that wasn't the big problem. In the top of the 5th, with the score 2-1, Roberto Kelly hit a base hit. Lansing scored, no big deal. But then Floyd, on a terrible throw by Jay Bell at third base, scored to make it 4-1. And then Roberto Kelly, for some reason, managed to scamper around the bases and score a Little League 3-run home run to make it 5-1. The fans went nuts. The Pittsburgh fans threw their promotional bats, like toy bats, out onto the field, causing a 15-minute delay and nearly ending in a forfeit. So the Expos with the big win, 6-2. Of course, everyone was wondering how the Expos would do without Marcus Grissom, John Wetland, Larry Walker, and Ken Hill. Basically, management had to cut funding because, after all, the 94 season, they didn't get the revenue for August and September's home games. And worst of all, had the Expos even made the playoffs in October, there was allegedly a $15 million subsidy for CBC slash TSN to cover the baseball playoffs. Well, I think CTV would have had it, but I think CBC was involved in it somehow. But yeah, it would have given the revenue needed to maybe keep 2 of those 4 players. Of course, Grissom was traded to Atlanta for Roberto Kelly. I think it was Roberto Kelly, or was it the Yankees trade? Or was it the Wetland trade to the Yankees for Roberto Kelly? Can't remember, but anyway, it doesn't matter. Yeah, Larry Walker went to Colorado on free agency, and Ken Hill was traded back to St. Louis. The number 3 big game of April 26th was Yankees-Texas. The lit lifter, if you will, at 1 o'clock Eastern Time. ESPN had a quadruple header, but anyway, the Yankees and Rangers, a lot of the real umpires paid to try to watch their counterparts, and the Yankees survived an 8-6 win. Joe DiMaggio threw out the first pitch. Oh, that Jimmy Key beat Kenny Rogers, John Wetland with the save. So it was just awkward for Expo fans to see John Wetland do so well. Of course, the key factor was, I'll talk about those 4 missing pieces and what happened to them for the Expos when I talk about the last game. Anyway, number 2 on the list for important games of April 26th, 95 was Blue Jays 13, Oakland 1. And you're thinking, that's biased, you're a Blue Jay fan, all that. Well, it's how it happened. So the Blue Jays in 94 were not that great. 5 games below 500 when the season ended. And basically their stuff will be huge. So anyway, Blue Jays won 13-1. It was a key game. I remember attempting to watch the A's and Blue Jays game as a 10-year-old, watching the first inning. And then they did that tribute to the victims of the Oklahoma City bombing, which happened a week prior. And, I got caught. Bad move, Cutter. Why do you want to watch baseball like that? I was supposed to be in bed by 7:30. Anyway, the Blue Jays and A's were battled. It would be Dave Stewart coming back to Toronto to face David Cone. So it's weird how the Blue Jays didn't have David Cone. Like, they had Cone in 92, and then in 93 he left for Kansas City, was it? Yeah, because it was a 1-year thing with Toronto. And then he came back. Kansas City traded him back to Toronto for the 95 season. So the Blue Jays had Cone back. And Dave Stewart went back to Oakland after the Blue Jays got rid of him. So anyway, Stan Javier had a sac fly for the A's, making 1-0, and then Alex Gonzalez, the guy who made that big mistake in the Steve Bartman game. I still say Gonzalez's error was a key factor, because if it wasn't for that, maybe the Cubs get out of the mess. Well, Gonzalez's RBI granted because Devon White tripled. 1-1 tie. But then the bottom of the second happened. Stewart actually had troubles. He walked John Olerud. He gave up a single to Roberto Alomar. Sean Green reached on an error, and then Ed Sprague bases loaded walk, making it 2-1. After a strikeout to Lance Parrish, Devon White hit a double to score 2 runs to make it 4-1. Then Alex Gonzalez hit a 2 RBI double to center, 6-1. Paul Molitor threw a wild pitch, got Gonzalez to third. Molitor walked. Joe Carter hit an RBI single to make it 7-1. Dave Stewart was done, and Chris Eddy came into the game. John Olerud graded him with an RBI single. Roberto Alomar grounded out, which meant that was 2 outs. But Sean Green, RBI single. Ed Sprague, RBI single. Lance Parrish walked, and then Devon White hit an RBI single to score 2. Carlos Reyes had to come into the game for the A's and got Alex Gonzalez to ground out. So the damage was done. 11 runs on 8 hits with an error by the A's and 2 left on base. Blue Jays were up 12-1 by the second inning. The Blue Jays would add an insurance run, quote unquote, on an RBI single by Alex Gonzalez, but the Blue Jays won 13-1. And you may be thinking, well, David Cone pitched a complete game victory. Actually, no. He only pitched 6 innings with Mike Timlin, Woody Williams, and Tony Castillo holding down the fort for an inning each. Dave Stewart didn't make out of the second inning. Then Crissetti and the Cardinals got red. Todd Van Poppel came in for 4 innings. Now, of course, you're thinking, well, the Blue Jays are doing quite well in 95. Well, that was false. The Blue Jays sunk back to mediocrity for a little bit, and David Cone was traded to the Yankees in the stretch drive. Now, I forgot to mention when I talked about the Orioles-Royals game is that, with a shortened spring training, pitchers didn't really have the warm-up necessary to throw a lot of pitches. Kevin Apier actually had a no-hitter through 5 innings, but had to be yanked because of pitch count. Regardless, the Mets took on the Rockies to start off the 95 season. This was huge. This game would be in Colorado at 7:30 at night. ESPN would have it. The crew of John Miller and Joe Morgan would be calling the game. Not only that, and the Rockies not only will parade their prized possession, Larry Walker, that they picked up in free agency. This was the first game at the new Coors Field. Now, people forget when you talk about the Rockies is that they have not been always at Coors Field. In 1993 and 94, their first 2 seasons, they actually played at Mile High Stadium where the Broncos played. So the Rockies were building this new thing, Coors Field, having the microbrewery, and it looked good. It's a nice park. So 47,000 fans came to see the Mets and Rockies start the season off. The Mets would parade Bobby Jones on the mound against Bill Swift. The Rockies started off fast. Larry Walker, his first at-bat as a Rocky, boom, RBI double to score Walt Weiss. Dante Bichette sac fly to score Joe Girardi, 2-0. Rockies would make it 3-0 on a Larry Walker RBI double. So Larry Walker was just picking up where he left off in 94 with the Expos to the Rockies 95. Now Expo fans were pissed off. All that. Rico Brogna, remember the name. He hit a leadoff home run in the 4th to make it 3-1. And then the Rockies scored a pair in the 5th, Joe Girardi RBI double, and Andres Galarraga RBI single, 5-1. However, the Mets loaded the bases for Todd Hundley in the 6th inning, and off of Bill Swift, grand slam, scores Brogna, David Segui, and Carl Everett. Segui and Everett would be future Expos. Anyway, with no outs, Eric Young hit a fly, what they call a fly ball double play, a sac fly. The sac fly got Mejia at third base. So it was a weird double play, but 6-5 Rockies. Mets would tie it up on a Bobby Bonilla RBI double. Yeah, he was playing for the Mets back in 95. And no, that did not lead to his $1 million buyout till 2036. That was his second tour of duty with the Mets. So it was 6-6, top of the 9th. Bobby Bonilla again, RBI single off Bruce Ruffin. You know the Ruffin, man. Scored Brett Butler, 7-6 Mets. It looked like it was over. John Franco was going to come in, as usual, and pitch for the save. Tim Bogart went to first base. Jason Bates popped fly out. Walt Weiss walked. Joe Girardi swung a swing. So, 2 outs, game over, right? Wrong. Larry Walker again hit it RBI double. So this guy would put up 3 RBIs in his first game with the Rockies. Man, Expo fans must be pissed. When he scores 7-7 tie. It stayed that way till the 13th when Jose Vizcaino hit an RBI single off Kirk Leskanic to score Butler. 8-7. And then Mike Remlinger came in for the save. After Bichette grounded out, Mike Keenery hit an RBI single. Jim Tatum pinch hit for Leskanic and hit an RBI double. So Jim Tatum, of all people, 7-7. It was now 8-8. They went with a pinch runner with O.R. Olivares. And he's a pitcher, though. Pedro Castellano struck out. Jason Bates walked, but Walt Weiss grounded out. End of inning. Then in the 14th, after Mark Thompson came in to replace Olivares, Joe Orzelak RBI double made it 9-8. So we got there, and then Renlinger stayed on the mound. They could have sent someone for a save situation, but Joe Girardi single. Larry Walker struck out swinging. For the first time in a while, he didn't produce. Andres Galarraga reached on a ground ball. Error by the third baseman, who I believe, who was that third baseman? It was Bonilla? Oh, or Bogart. I think it was Bogart. Yeah, it was Tim Bogart. And then Dante Bichette on a 2-1 pitch hit a fly ball home run to score. Girardi, Galarraga, and himself. Rockies win 11-9. And John Miller's call. Deep drive into left center. And there's the end of the fairy tale. No, that's the end of the Storybook ending. And that's the end of the storybook. I don't know. The storybook ending. And the Rockies win the game 11-9. How did Larry Walker do as a Rocky in that game? 3 for 7, 3 RBIs. Okay, so, yeah, he played the whole game, though. So, yeah, that was just harsh. And all that Larry Walker would do such a thing. And the worst part for Expo fans is how good the 4 former players were. Well, Kent Hill and the Cardinals were not really that good. But Marcus Grissom won the World Series with the Braves. John Wetteland and his Yankees were close to winning the playoff series against Seattle, but they choked in Seattle, losing 3 straight. And Larry Walker, well, even though the Rockies would lose the first round to the Braves, he was still an icon. And he's a Rockies icon that 2 years later won the NL MVP. And it was just pure magic. Wetteland would become the closer for 96 when the Yankees won the World Series, despite what people think. It was not more Rivera. Rivera was a struggling starter, was a spot starter / middle reliever at that time. And Grissom would be okay, but I mean the Braves would falter to the Yankees in the World Series, so Wetteland got his World Series ring. Walker would never get a World Series ring, neither did Kent Hill. But doesn't matter, it does. But baseball was back in 95. The fans stayed away in droves, attendance were terrible. But I mean, that's understandable. But you know what? It was great to see the 95 season finally come into play. Anyway, I'm done to do.